After 6 episodes, I hope Aurora chasing has become more clear for you. Over the past 3 years, I've chased with some of these people, and I've also done a lot of chasing on my own. During that time, I documented part of the process, and now that you have a little bit of understanding of what chasing's like, I thought there would be no better way to end this series than to bring you on a chase around Calgary and some other parts of Alberta. The way a chase starts is usually by receiving a notification from the Facebook group or Space Weather Live. You can do this by turning on notifications on your phone and by setting alerts to the group specifically. Theoretically, for the purpose of this tutorial, let's pretend like you woke up to these notifications. There's a chance of a G2 moderate storm. For most people, this is 100% worth keeping an eye on, as G2 can be seen over the city. As we go through our daily routine of work, gym, cooking, etc., we keep our eyes on the data using the Space Weather Live app. A thread for the Facebook group will be made and pinned from a member. You can keep an eye on this as well, because if the lights do make an appearance, fellow members will post pictures and updates in the comment section. We also begin to plan locations based on weather and cloud predictions. You can Google exactly what I just said, and there's lots of free options to see where clouds might be. If it's going to be a clear sky, then we don't have to worry. We're going to stay in Calgary because we've already seen them in multiple locations, and seeing them over the city is possible. Since my apartment balcony gives me a view of downtown, I'll be able to stay inside and check. If they do come out, I'll decide to get closer to downtown to get a better shot of the city's core. Now that we have a plan, we'll begin to gather our gear and supplies, starting with camera gear. For anyone starting, you'll need a camera that's capable of shooting long exposure photos, charged batteries, a memory card, I recommend 32 gigabytes or more, tripod, shutter remote if your camera doesn't have a built-in one, a camera lens, preferably wide angle, and that is about the minimum you should have. You can balance your camera on another object if you don't have a tripod, but that limits your composition choice. Now that we have our camera supplies, it's time to move on to our chasing gear. You'll want clothes appropriate for the season and for nighttime. Summertime here usually drops to around 10 degrees, so we'll make sure to have athletic footwear like hiking boots or running shoes, pants, shirt, sweater or light jacket, gloves and toque, and extra layers in case it gets colder. Next, we'll make sure you have a headlamp, bear spray to protect yourself, flashlight, water, snacks, extra batteries for lighting equipment, and of course a backpack to travel with everything in case you leave your vehicle. There are a lot of additional items like a jerry can with extra gas, things like that in case of emergency, but for the purpose of this, we're just going to go over the basics. Now that we have everything we need, we can leave in a hurry if we need to. Nighttime comes and the data's looking good. So a lot of this series has been about trying to prove that the Northern Lights can be seen in Calgary, and it does happen more often than people think. Right now, we're about to go get a money shot that we've been looking forward to for a long time. I don't know when else we're gonna have an opportunity like this with the lights in the city. This is crazy. This is when you jump on a call with some friends to see if they're game to go out with you. Most of them will say yes.
Yo. Okay.
Yeah, we're gonna go you know the viewpoint of like the Saddle Dome in the city? We're gonna try going there because I've been trying to get a shot there. It died down now, I can't really see it anymore, but it's gonna pick up. Well, it's been KP7 since this morning, like 6 a.m. Yeah. Okay, so we just made it to Scotsman Hill, and even though the data is the exact same as it was on my balcony, we're not really seeing anything in the sky right now. It's just a lot of cloud. So I think we're gonna stick around for a little bit and see if anything happens. Right before we were about to record, it actually said KP8. I've actually never seen KP8 before in the 2 years that I've started to chase Northern Lights. This is one of the things about aurora chasing is even though all the data can look good, it doesn't necessarily mean you're gonna see results in the sky. It's one of the like mysterious parts to it. It's one of the most satisfying parts because you can go out all night and you could have KP8 written on Space Weather Live, and just because you have insanely good data doesn't mean it's always gonna show up. It's super weird, but it just goes to show like you can't be completely accurate. Unfortunately, like most chases, the lights did not last long in the location we chose, and that's part of the risk of waiting in a place with lots of light pollution. That brings me to another point, which is to plan a spot with little to no light pollution if you want a good chance of seeing them. Again, we chose to try to see it over the city because we have seen it in most parts of Alberta already. A big part of chasing is like most things in life. If you keep trying, eventually you'll succeed. Really stuck.
Brandon's got like a bunch of hand warmers in his sleeping bag. Our boots are frozen solid.
The bush, miserable, cold.
For the past 6 months, I've been trying to create a series that not only tells people's stories, but also educates you a little bit about how to be an aurora chaser and what it means to be an aurora chaser. This project has been something I've wanted to create since I moved here 3 years ago and since I took that leap of faith. There's a lot that happened behind the scenes, and if you're an aspiring photographer or filmmaker like myself, then I recommend you follow my socials because I will be posting some behind the scenes and some lessons that I had to learn along the way of creating this series. It involves a lot of things I wish I would have or could have done better. I made this mainly for Calgarians and for people who know nothing about aurora chasing or want to get into it. But I also did make this for the Alberta Aurora Chasers group. I encourage you to join the Facebook group. I encourage you to spend more time in nature. And I encourage you to get more involved with communities that care about the same things that you do. Thank you to all the volunteers who gave me their time and permission to use a lot of the photos and videos you've seen in this series. Thank you for inviting me into your home so that I could complete these interviews. Lastly, this isn't the last Aurora project that I will be filming. This was the first step towards something much, much bigger. Thank you to the TELUS STORYHIVE team for their dedication, education, time, and experience. Okay, that's it. So what are you waiting for? Download the Space Weather Live app. Join the Facebook group. I promise you, you won't regret it. Like, can aurora chasing be dangerous? If so, like, what dangers should people consider, especially people who are just getting into it and lack experience?
Absolutely. I mean, aurora chasing is fundamentally not dangerous, but there are certainly elements that can put you in a little bit of risk. When you're off in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the night, there are obviously going to be risks that come into play. Wild animals are a possibility. Hurting yourself in the middle of the night, and being an hour away from emergency services, or not even being in cellular coverage. That's a possibility. It's getting less and less now, but there are certainly some places where your cell coverage is not guaranteed. Other humans are another factor in aurora chasing. Not as much, but certainly something that one must take into consideration. I've heard of people having their gear stolen from their car in the middle of the night when they were out somewhere remote and they were far away from their car, and they came back and their car had been ransacked. That story is not common, but I have heard about it. You've also got the flip side of rural residents and their concerns about unknown people in their area. You're living in a rural location. You know that emergency services are quite a ways away from you, not going to be there immediately. So there's immediately a sense of vulnerability there. And then 2 a.m. you've got headlights at the entrance to your driveway. There's that uncertainty of why is there a car there? You're not expecting cars to be there. Why is there a car there? So there's that flip side of is aurora chasing, creating a sense of danger for others. We have rural community members in our community that are there just to be aware of when is there a heightened interest in aurora and when might there be cars in my driveway. So one of the things that we do is we advise to stay off private property, to stay away from driveways approaching homes. If you're one of the things that when aurora chasers are out looking for that spot, they're on dirt roads, they're on rural roads, and they'll pull over into pullouts, like a pullout, an entrance to a field. A lot of times is a really great place to park your car. But if you do that at the entrance to a driveway to a person's home, that can be intimidating. So you have to be considerate of that. There's a lot of puts and takes, a lot of balances between people thinking about each other when aurora chasing, and it's just really a matter of thinking about those around you. I've seen someone who discovered a wolf in their photo the next morning. I've heard a story of a couple of guys. They were doing a hike to an aurora, to a spot, and during their hike they heard chirping, and they wrote it off as a bird. And then the next day they found out that chirping sound was actually a cougar. That was they thought it was a bird that was following them for like half an hour. Turned out it was a cougar following them for half an hour, which is a far different concern, right? That cougar was assessing whether or not they were a meal or not.
So how'd they figure out it was a cougar afterwards?
One of them was pretty sure it was a cougar already, but wasn't telling the other, because obviously, you don't want to completely freak out the other person that, I think we're being stalked by a cougar at 2 a.m. nowhere near any kind of escape. And then he listened to a YouTube video, and it was pretty clear that what they were hearing was not a bird. Yeah.
It's like my worst fear.
Oh yeah.
At night in the mountain.
Yeah. I mean, I've never had a dangerous experience, but personally, I've never had a dangerous experience. I've never had human dangerous experiences. I've never had animal dangerous experiences. I'm always very conscious, especially when I'm out alone. One of my favorite stories of my biggest scare was being out alone, 2 a.m., looking off into a field and taking pictures, and then hearing this like sound in the field beyond me. I was sure it was a bear, right? I'm like, that's a bear, right? Ran into the car, flashlight, looking around, didn't see anything. Like, okay, I'm gonna go back out, and heard it again. There's a sound, and I did that a couple of times, back and forth into the car. Finally, I'm like, I don't actually see anything. There doesn't seem to be anything. I have a flashlight, looking around, pointed it down, and there was a salamander in the dry leaves, scrunching around in the leaves. And at 2 a.m., that was the loudest sound. I was certain that was a bear. And I was like, oh, it's a salamander.
Do I have any crazy stories from aurora chasing? There was one from the end of summer where I had headed out solo. Most of my chasing last year was actually solo. I did have my dog by my side, funnily enough, and I had set up in a field to kind of figure out what was going on in the sky, what compositions I might like, kind of almost just a little bit of a test shot. And I was standing in the dark, probably about a minute or two away from my vehicle. My dog was kind of sitting by my side, and I'd had an exposure going for a couple seconds, and my dog kind of started this low growl, which in my experience when I'd heard her make that sound before, it was always for wildlife. And so I had my headlamp on the low red setting, and I kind of turned it to the side, and I saw some eyes reflect back at me, and I was like, okay, there's something there. Turned on the high and turned to the side, and there was a bear, probably only a couple of meters away from me. I probably woke him up from a nap. And of course, kind of with my movement of being startled, immediately startled him as well. Bear's eyesight, to my understanding, isn't super great at night, so he probably couldn't really see a lot of what was going on, but he could certainly smell, and so it was kind of a very awkward flurry of remembering everything that I was taught about bear safety and what not to do, and making sure to do the opposite. Had bear spray on my hip, but I grabbed the dog, awkwardly grabbed the tripod under one arm, almost dropped the camera. Camera bag was hanging open, and just kind of backed away quite promptly back towards my vehicle. And by the time I kind of got to the vehicle and my adrenaline was super high, I'd kind of seen him take off towards the back of the field and stand up a couple times and take a look at me. And I did continue chasing that night because Steve came out right as that happened, but I was definitely a little bit more cautious after that little incident of just being aware of where I am and who might be sharing the field with me.
My other story was a porcupine that was between me and my car for like probably half an hour. I couldn't, fortunately he wasn't like moving around very much, but couldn't get to the car for a good half hour, and I didn't really need to, but suddenly you feel like you really want to when you can't, right? Fortunately, porcupines are rather slow and fairly, you can tell where they're going, so I wasn't really in any kind of danger. The biggest danger, though, I think, is when you're driving. Middle of the night, driving around, you're tired. You've probably been up all night and you're wanting to head home. You just want to get to bed. You're very tired, and that's when a lot of animals like to wander around. Deer and moose are always big dangers in this area. So, I try to be, when I'm driving home, I'm trying to be as extra aware as I can for animals on the side of the road, for those risks. I came across a llama one time in the middle of the night, and all it wanted to do was hang out in my headlights. It took me a few minutes just to get around it without it getting in my way. And then, there's, in the winter, there's obvious risks of driving with road conditions. When your hobby involves sometimes pulling off to the side of the road, and you've got a lot of snow in the area, you don't always realize that ditch isn't this way. Even though there's snow level, the ditch is actually dropping, and that snow is an illusion. And you can get your vehicle stuck. I did that once. I was pulling off to the side of the road, and my vehicle, my SUV, slipped into the ditch. I wasn't even driving. I was maybe doing 10 kilometers an hour, driving very slowly. But the depth, the angle of the ditch was enough that my vehicle got in there pretty good, and I couldn't get it out. It was like 2 a.m. and I can't get out, and there's aurora overhead. That night I had, it was like probably 2013, 2014. I reached out to the community, said, "Hey, I'm stuck." And during the aurora, man, it must have been about 4 or 5 people came and helped me out in the middle of the night, and they had driven 45 minutes to get to my location. That was, if you think about the community, that's really one of my favorite stories of one of my favorite community stories of people helping each other out. And you see it from time to time. I've seen it a few times last winter where someone got stuck in a ditch and they put out a call for help, and 3 or 4 people will put up their hands and they'll jump in to help out. There's inevitably someone with a Jeep or two that can pull you out in a pretty quick turnaround.